All right, welcome everybody. I am Stacey with Nutrition Jobs. And one of the most frequently asked questions that I get related to jobs and getting a job and applying for a job is the job interview process, and just generally like how to get an interview, be successful in an interview, and be able to present themselves confidently. It's a question I get all the time. And so I thought I could bring on an expert guest who is very versed in the process of hiring dietitians, interviewing dietitians, specifically though for private practice. So there are a lot of dietitians that want to go into private practice, don't want to start up their own private practice just yet, or they want to work part-time, or they want to have private practice as an option in addition to other types of jobs that they might be holding, or just don't want the responsibility of having a private practice. So for those who are interested in interviewing for and applying for a position within a private practice, I have a really, really special guest today. And I would like to bring to you Christie Hunter, who is an amazing dietitian, and she runs a private practice, a flourishing, super successful private practice, and hires a lot of dietitians and looks at a lot of dietitians' resumes, works with them and to bring them in for the interview process and onboard them, and has some really, really amazing expert advice. So I would like to welcome everybody to Christie Hunter. Thank you, Christie, for being here.
Thanks, Stacey, for having me.
Thank you. I'm so sorry we've got some technical issues today where I can't actually show her face, but I'll just keep showing the screen where it actually has her face on here. So Christie, we talked just a little bit about what your expertise is, but can you tell us all about how you got into private practice and sort of what led you to go into private practice as a dietitian?
Sure. So I was a clinical dietitian. I started out my career just like you're supposed to, right? As they tell you to, as a clinical dietitian. And then I transitioned over to employee wellness. And I did that for 12 years and I loved my job. But I had a friend who was working in private practice in my area that I kept in touch with. And she had said, Christy, you should come over here and start seeing people and be a private practice. I'd love to refer people to you. And so truly it started out as a side gig, and I just was going to do it in addition to my full-time job just to make some extra money. And then it quickly grew, and I became kind of an expert in my area in corporate wellness because that's what I was doing for my job. So I developed a private practice that was focusing on corporate wellness. And here we are 12 years later, and I have 5 dietitians and an office manager that are all working full time. So that part-time gig turned into a full-time gig pretty quickly.
That is fascinating. You have 5 dietitians working for you in the private practice. Wow.
Yes.
That is amazing. And so did you first, like, when did you start to expand your private practice and knowing that you needed to hire additional people to help you out? And that's an amazing accomplishment, I think.
Right. So as an entrepreneur, like, you work hard, right, to start a business. And when I realized that I needed to hire somebody was when I was having to turn business away because I couldn't do it myself.
Right.
And again, when I started, I was doing everything. So I was answering the phone, I was booking the people, I was seeing them, I was filing the insurance claims, I was billing it, all of that. So I quickly became like the one-man show. And so then I was like, I'm working all the time. This is not why I'm doing this. So I hired somebody else. And that was within 3 years of starting the practice. And then and again, this is one of my pieces of advice to any dietitian, is that our field really is small when you think about it. And the way that I've hired most of my dietitians is because people have come to me or because I've kept in touch with them through previous connections. So one of my dietitians was a previous intern of mine. One of mine I worked with the 6 month I had a clinical job. So it just really is about connection and realizing that this world is small. Don't burn any bridges, because you never know when you're going to need a favor, when you're going to have a job opportunity, when somebody's going to call you for a reference for somebody else that you may know. So really, it's a small world.
I hear you with the networking. So that's interesting. Okay. So that said, I am completely fascinated with the process of how you brought people on board. And you and I have talked. So we met in person. We've known each other for a while, and then we met at a conference and started talking more about how you have this thriving private practice, how you have dietitians that work for you, and then we started talking about how you onboard those people from looking or so from advertising or knowing that you needed to fill a position to actually onboarding them. And I'm completely fascinated with the process, with your eyeballs and your brain, knowing how when you're looking at a pool of applicants, to sort of then filtering down and drilling down and finding that one golden candidate. I'm super curious about that whole process. And I'm curious about that whole process for our entire community, because everyone else is interested in that. Because I think working for a private practice is everything. Like it's the best job, I think. You really get to understand and get to work with somebody who is a leader and can mentor you in leadership. So I'm going to step backwards a little bit. So when you are looking at a pool of applicants from the very beginning, what is something that somebody can do to stand out, or what have you learned works or doesn't work with that very first phase of being noticed by you?
Right. So that's a great question. So one of the things that I look for when I'm looking for applicants is somebody who has experience with one-on-one counseling. That is what you do in most of the private practice setting. So if you have been in let's say you're a dietetic intern and you are trying to apply for your first job and you want to work in a private practice, you want to definitely highlight the fact that you spent time in a rotation doing some one-on-one counseling. And that doesn't necessarily have to be in a clinical setting. So that could be in a community setting that you have worked with individuals, and whatever that community setting was, to kind of promote change, how you develop relationships. A
Mhm.
lot of what we do in private practice is building relationships, because unlike what you are experiencing when you're going through a clinical rotation, right? You're seeing patients and you're making recommendations and you're, treating them, and then they're out the door.
Yeah.
That is not at all what you do in private practice. You want to keep these people in your office, right? So you want to really establish a relationship and kind of look at it as maybe what you would when you are consider becoming friends with somebody or dating somebody. And that's how you want to present yourself, is that you know how to build relationships with people, you know how to make small chat, you know how to make somebody feel comfortable and
Comfortable.
feel
Yes.
open to sharing. And that is really important. And that's sometimes really hard to pull out on a resume. But if you can highlight that in either a cover letter or in an email correspondence or LinkedIn message, that would really help.
I like that keyword, the idea of being able to, so it's not just nutrition counseling or coaching, it is the relationship that's built together with the family or the actual participant. So I'm imagining so let's say somebody is in a clinical position, or they are just finishing up with their internship. They are thinking about the time that they're in the patient's room as they're being discharged, and having to give them a low sodium diet or something, and they're working with the family. Everything's happening all at once. Right. There's not a huge relationship that's built there. But it sounds like then what you're really looking for is a little bit of longevity with that participant, or a little bit of just this, like you said, like a relationship with them. So I'm wondering if interns or brand new students have just a little bit of experience, but maybe not so much. How could they, in your eyes, look more attractive, or how can they get more experience? I call it like experience ships, or how do you think that people can get just a little bit more attractive in terms
Right.
of that one-on-one?
any kind of thing that you can do that would building that relationship. So even if you're thinking about a sales position, right? So even if they were working in a sales job and you had to like speak to someone, tell them about the process, what you're going to offer them, like that is really kind of pertaining to private practice, because the thing is that, clients and patients are going to come to you and say, hey, I want to come to you and I need to lose weight. My doctor told me that I need to lose weight because I'm pre-diabetic. Sometimes those patients are thinking it's a one-time visit. So you're having to explain to that patient to say, okay, that's great. Usually when we meet for something like this is going to be a 4 to 6 visit, commitment. And this is kind of how we're going to do. And we're going to slowly pace things out and give you material and give you homework. And you're going to come back and you're going to tell me how it worked. And then we're going to see how that did. And then we're going to set next step goals. So you're not giving them like, here's all this diabetic information and out the door they go. So if you can highlight that through any experience that you've had, whether it's a project that you've done, whether it's a sales job, just so that people that I can understand that you know how to disperse information, to follow up with information, to build that relationship, to make sure that it's client led too, because I have an agenda, right, of what needs to be said to manage the prediabetes. But I also need to make sure that it's relevant, because if it's not relevant to this particular patient, then they're going to leave and feel like, oh gosh, well, she didn't listen to one thing I said. I said that I'm struggling to make finances, meet ends. And she's telling me to go to Whole Foods and buy this really expensive,
Right.
flour. So, you really got to make sure that you understand and can meet people where they are. And you can do that in any kind of job.
Yeah. Oh, that is so genius. I love that. So, so I think what I'm also hearing from you is you're building a relationship with the patient, not only so that they can have a better outcome, but but your private practice is a business, right? So if
Right.
somebody is coming in for they've got a referral and you've got appointments set up for them and they have their first counseling session and it just didn't go that well because maybe the person didn't really understand the value of the relationship or understand the value of keeping that patient in the practice on the schedule, being able to bill the insurance until they felt comfortable and had made some modifications that were then resulting in a good medical outcome. So I think, yeah, so there's the relationship building as it relates to the business of a private practice. So would you say then that maybe another element of being successful in the position, or looking at, again, back to the idea of looking at this pool of applicants, if someone has an understanding, appreciation, or even past experience with just business in general, would that be helpful?
Absolutely. It absolutely would be helpful, because here's the thing with the business too, right? It's a lot harder to get new patients and clients in the door. It's a
Oh,
lot
yes.
easier to maintain the people once they're in the door. And,
Yes.
and when you think about your services, right, you have to think about it just like you would any other aspect of you trying to learn something new. So if you and I wanted to, improve our fitness, we would go to a personal trainer and they wouldn't give us the workout and be like, okay, here's what you do for arms and here's what you do for legs and here's what you do for chest, and give it all to us in one thing. And then we go home and do it. That doesn't work.
Or not
The
do it.
trainer, right. The trainer comes and says, okay, you're going to come back every week and this is what we're going to do. And so same thing if you're trying to learn a musical instrument. So that's how you have to think about it. You have all this knowledge, right? Yes, we want to give it to the person, but we also want to give it to them in pieces so they can be successful and get the best outcomes. And plus it makes your job easier to then trying to always get new people in the door. So
Yeah.
yes, you have to understand a business aspect in order to be successful in private practice. The other part of that too is understanding. I think sometimes if you, for example, if a new dietetic intern is coming out and saying, yes, I want to be in private practice, and they do some research and they look and they say, oh, wow, this wonderful, private practice that I see on the internet, they're charging people, let's just say $200 for an initial assessment. And they think, okay, that's great. I'm going to get paid, 175 of that. Cause if they're charging the patient, surely I should get paid 175 of that. But you got to understand there's a lot of costs that go into this business, right? you
Totally.
have, first of all, the cost of liability insurance, you have the cost of advertising, you have the cost of marketing, you have a website, you've gone out and done marketing materials. There's a lot of stuff involved. And as far as like, how do you collect the money and the billing and all of that? So I would definitely encourage people that when you are applying for a job and you see that number of what people charge, don't assume that you're going to get all of that, half of that, 3/4 of that, because a lot of that goes into running the business itself. And people don't understand that. And that's fine, because not everybody is made to be a business owner. And that's why there's people that are really good at seeing the patients and working and then leaving, because they don't want to deal with the headaches of the billing and the chasing down the money and the policies and procedures and the risk and liabilities that come along with it. And that's fine. But you need to understand too that owning a business has its risk and liabilities that also come with a price tag.
Yeah, and I think that's important to appreciate. So you may not, so a candidate may not have that experience of running their own business and knowing, to pay their LLC, money every year. Like they wouldn't have to know all that, but maybe just coming in with an appreciation for that, or an openness to it, or an openness to learning about it, or just understanding how the practice that they're doing, the work that they're doing, fits into the bigger picture. Because I think that being employed with a private practice would be the best of everything, but also just being mindful of what my employer is going through, or what the bigger picture is
Correct.
like. So I like that. And then back to what you said also, like, treating it, it's a business, and that, with sales, they always say that you really foster your existing customers. So you foster your existing patient base, the ones that are moving through, because it's easier to have that rather than getting new people. But also those existing patients, if they're having a positive relationship with you as a caregiver, that they're going to give the practice referrals. So that's like a twofer.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So that is fascinating. I actually would not have thought of that. Yeah. Okay, so we talked about relationships, the idea of business, keeping the existing people happy, and considering the entire operation as a business. What are some other sort of attractive elements to an applicant when you're just first looking at them?
Right. So the other part about it is, right, we all have done, if we're all dietitians, right, we've all taken the exam, we've passed the exam. So I kind of say that we're going to assume everybody knows the Krebs cycle. We're going to assume everybody knows the food service, portions of that. What I also want to know is, tell me what makes you the person that you are and what made you become interested in this field, right? So I have a private practice that focuses on corporate wellness. We do a lot of one-on-one appointments as well as group presentations. We do social media, we do all this other stuff, right? But if I have an applicant that comes to me and says, oh my gosh, I love this field because, I love cooking, and I used to go with my, grandma to these senior classes and they would do these cooking demonstrations, and I really fell in love with that. And you tell me that aspect of it, that may open up a whole new world of my business that I never even thought of. So by you bringing new things to the table and telling me like what made you interested in this field, and maybe some things that you've done in the past, maybe you've done videos, maybe you are really good at creating a product, a written product, so those type of things that you have done that maybe like I don't know, and maybe that's a part of the business that I'm not good at, nobody on my current team is good at, and you could bring this whole new skill set to it. So don't be afraid to show me who you are. And that's really sometimes hard to come out into the application process. So I love it when I have a candidate that can really highlight that and say, either in a cover letter, an email, or in the interview process, to say, hey, these are some things that I've done, and this is what brought me to this field. And maybe this could, add to your business.
Oh, I like that. So you're sort of hoping for somebody not just to come in and be like a passive employee, right? You're
Right.
thinking of like, how can they, again, back to the business, like how can they make our business super relevant and competitive and popular and bring in more business, and and provide more value for our patients? How can we partner together with amazing ideas to make the business even better? I love that. Again, that was something I wouldn't have thought of either. These are all so fascinating. Then okay, so that's the pool of people that sort of are interesting. Any other thoughts on what makes somebody really attractive?
Yes. Let me tell you this too. Do your homework, right?
Oh,
Spend the time to do your homework. I
totally.
tell you, nothing is worse than having somebody apply and say, I really am looking forward. I want to work in eating disorders. Well, there's nothing on my
Yeah.
website that says we specialize in eating disorders. That's not my area. That's not my niche. So if you come and show up for an interview and tell me that, that is going to prove to me that you have not done your research. You have not looked at one thing on our, social media or our website that says that we do eating disorders. So I would tell you to take the time to do the homework. I would also tell you to look at some of these things like on LinkedIn to tell us, who are the mutual connections? Oh, okay. Look, I'm applying for this job at Christie RD and looks like she knows Stacey. Stacey, let me reach out to you and ask you, hey, what do you know about Christie RD? What should I say in my, interview? Because these mutual connections too, if you do your homework and you find out you have somebody in common, can also help you because they can put a good word in, or they can say, oh, you should tell Christie that you know how to do group presentations because that's what a lot of their practice does. That will help you. So do your homework, find out who your mutual connections are, and I'll tell you what not to do. This is also a big pet peeve. And I think if you talk to any private practice dietitians, they will tell you this is the biggest turnoff is if you say, I am interested in starting my own private
Oh,
practice.
right.
Okay. This is my analogy. Let's say that you and your best friend growing up had a lemonade stand and y'all created the best lemonade. You made these cute posters. You sold your lemonade. Well, then let's say that your best friend picks up and says, I'm going to go down the street here and I'm going to take that same lemonade recipe, the same posters. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sell it for 5 cents cheaper or a quarter cheaper, whatever. That is exactly what it's like when you tell a private practice dietitian that you have dreams and aspirations of owning your own private practice. I am not going to hire you, right? Because why would I spend the time training you, giving you the
Yep.
tips and the trades and all my secrets, right? My secret sauce for you to go down the street and, create a competition.
Right. Right. I know you and I talked about that before. Is there any leeway in that? Like, what if they said, obviously, if they said in 6 months, I can't wait to open up my own private practice. So there are definitely no. What if they said in 5 years, like once all my kids are in school, I would like to open up my private practice, or maybe just being transparent about that. Is that still a thumbs down or is that a maybe or?
That's a maybe. And I think what I would do with that person is I would say, hey, you know what? Maybe in 5 years, you will be, my clinical director and I'll have the dietitians reporting to you.
Yeah.
Or maybe in 5 years, I'm considering selling my practice and maybe I would consider selling the practice to you.
Yeah.
That's where I would look at opportunities like that. But I definitely would still be hesitant for somebody to say in 5 years from now, I plan to be in this area and I'm going to open up a private practice with the same exact niche as you
On your block.
on
Right?
your block. Yeah, no.
In your private practice, do you see patients virtually and in person? Well, you
Yes.
don't see patients. I mean, you're doing the corporate wellness, but yeah.
No, we do. So our practice, we do both in-person and telehealth, and
Okay.
we are in North Carolina. And so our state is a licensure state. So we see anybody across the state of North Carolina. But yes, we do both in person, and we are having more and more requests for in-person appointments. So I know that people are saying, oh, we can just, have an office and have a virtual office and not have to pay the rent, all that stuff. But there still is a population that prefer, especially for that first appointment, to be in person. So we still have a pretty high demand now for those in-person appointments, but we don't do them every day. So it's only certain days of the week that, dietitians are going into the office.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Christy, I can just like talk on and on about. I just find this fascinating. You're so versed in all this. So, if you've got a few more minutes, curious about then the next stage of the process of the job applying, and that would be like the cover letter, the resume. to get the interview? We talked sort of about like what you want to see on there. Are you for a cover letter or against a cover letter, or are you neutral about it?
It doesn't necessarily have to be a cover letter, right? What I appreciate though is an application and either a cover letter that kind of is personable, or you find me and send me a message and tell me that you've applied for the job,
Yeah.
right? I really appreciate that. And then there's things that little things make a big difference. And I notice these things, right? So when somebody shows up on time and is prepared and professional and, with it and seems to have their ducks in a row, not showing up all frazzled looking, like they just rolled out of bed. I've had applicants that in the past have done a virtual interview with me and their bed is unmade in the background, right? And to me, if you're going to show up for a job interview without taking the 3 minutes to make your bed, you're not going to do it for a client. And again, like we just said, if you're doing virtual appointments, I don't want my business brand and my name represented with an apartment with an unmade bed in the background.
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? Like it's a reflection, not like how you present yourself in the interview or in that first application process is not only for you, but it's you're projecting on like how are they going to show up for the client, for the patient? Like that's going to reflect on our business. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so you spend time building your business name, and you don't want somebody to ruin that in the first few minutes of a first impression. So take the time to be nice, be on time, dress nice, show up looking like you're ready, with your resume, with your points ready. Again, you have given wonderful tools out there for people applying for jobs. There are some basic questions that you've told us to prepare for. Like when I ask somebody, what are your strengths? And they have no clue, like they've never even heard that question before, you're not prepared, right, for that interview. If I ask you, what are some of your weaknesses? And they have to think about it. One of my favorite questions to ask too is if I had to ask your friends, what are 3 words that would describe you? Be thinking about some of these top interview questions and prepare so that you come off like you have done your homework. And that's, again, a reflection of how you would prepare for that client appointment.
Yeah. It's all related. It's not just that you want someone to be sort of, type A about interviewing. It's that you want them to be organized and to be mindful of the patient and what their needs are. It totally makes sense. So, in the job interview, thank you for those questions. I think that is that everyone always wants to know, like, what questions are asked, how can I prepare? I mean, I have a whole course on like how to prepare for job interviewing. So I love that you have, so the 3 words, your strengths, how would your friends describe you? Any other insights on specific job interview questions that someone could expect when applying for a job in a private practice?
Yes, because we're going to ask you tell us about a time that you worked with someone who was difficult, right? So that, again, this is a scenario that you're going to have a client, if you're working in private practice, you're going to have a client that every thing that you suggest, even if you're using motivational interviewing, they're going to shut it down. So how did you work with that person? How do you deal with the difficult client that everything that you say is, no, I don't want to do that. No, I can't do that. I've tried that. That didn't work. How did you work around that? Because again, you're going to encounter those. And then you're going to encounter the people that say like, oh, they know it all because they, had a friend who heard from Gwyneth Paltrow that this is how you should do it. And how do you work with the know-it-alls? So those are some of those things. And then what about when people cancel on you or don't show up? What would you think about to do for follow-up? Because again, that's part of the job, right? You're going to have a certain percentage of people that don't show up or cancel and don't reschedule. So what initiatives are you going to take to get those people back in?
Oh, I like that word. Like, what initiative are you going to do for the follow-up? Not just like, oh, good, my day's free now. Right.
Right.
Like, no, this is a business.
This is
You've
a
got,
business.
you've
We
got some
need people sitting in
expertise.
the chair.
Right, that's right.
Yes.
There's people sitting in the chair. There's people that need you, and this person probably needs even more follow-up because they've created, unless it was a true emergency. Sometimes people make excuses for why they don't want to do something that's difficult. And so, right, being able to troubleshoot that to like, how would they solve that? I love that question. I love that
How
question.
would you do that? Yes.
Yeah,
Those are some
yeah,
good questions.
yeah.
Um, those are the ones that I can think of off the top of my
Those
head.
are those are incredible. Those are like little gold mines. And I always think that people who are job interviewing have no idea what they're going to walk into for a job interview, and having the cheat sheet for what they can expect is fantastic. Do you ever like a candidate to ask you like what can they expect in a job interview?
Yes, I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
fine with them asking me that.
because you
And the
want
other
them to be
thing,
successful too, right? Yeah.
right, I want them to be successful and I want them to show off, some of their be prepared to show off the things that they think can help me in a private practice. So absolutely.
Yeah.
And then also on that too is I am a big person with follow up. And I'll tell you this, when I'm going out and marketing my business, right? One of the things that we have found is that even if it's not a good match. So even if I go and talk to a physician and the physician says, no, I can't refer people to you because we have to refer within our own system or whatever, I still will make sure to send some kind of follow-up, whether it's a email, a personal handwritten note, a phone call, whatever, to say thank you for your time. And I would encourage you to do the same thing to the people that you are applying with. If you have taken that time to meet with somebody, and even if it's not a good match, again, you don't know what's going to happen in the future. And so again, you might need that person come around and find out, oh my gosh, that person is applying for another job similar to that. So I would still recommend that you send a message on LinkedIn, send an email, write a handwritten thank you note to say, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to interview, because I think that goes a long way. And again, if you're willing to do that for me, then that means that I know you're willing to do that kind of stuff for working with patients and clients.
Or
And
the business.
that
Yeah.
is what is going to matter.
Yeah, that is genius. Again, like I like how this theme is how you're showing up is going to parallel or align with what it's going to look like as working in the actual business, working in the private practice. I just think I love that. That is so insightful. I was just going to ask you like what your thoughts are on thank you notes or follow up, and of course that makes sense. Of course, because that's going to happen a lot in a private practice, and maintaining the referrals or keeping the patients engaged or keeping them, letting them maintain their appointments that they've got out in the future. So that makes sense. That's really good. Um, Anything else, Christy, that I haven't thought of asking you about the
Yes,
interview
let me tell you
process?
what, let me tell you one other thing that I think would go a long way. And
You're
I
amazing,
try
by the
to do
way.
this. So if I have a candidate, right, that is not a good match for me, right? The candidate may not ask for this, but sometimes I will volunteer and give feedback on why I didn't think it was a good match, right? So if you have you interviewed and let's say that you don't get the job, maybe you could ask, say, I totally understand it wasn't a good match, but do you mind giving me some feedback on what I could do better for future interviews? Because again, I was happy to tell that candidate, yes, you could make your bed. That would be really good to do in the future. And again, because I'm all about dietitians being successful, and I want our field to grow, and I want people to be amazing dietitians that we're trained to be. So I want you to be successful. Maybe it's just not a good match for me, but I would love to help you to say, hey, this is something you could do differently when you are doing another interview in the future. So maybe ask the person that you've interviewed with for some feedback and be willing to receive it. That's
Yeah,
the other part.
that's right. Because what have you got to lose, right? You've already lost the job.
Right. You
So
didn't
you
get it. It's a
can.
good match. And again, it might not be personal, right? You might be the best gut health dietitian that there is. But guess what? We already have a gut health dietitian on our team. So maybe that's not what we need. We needed, somebody who specializes in pediatrics or whatever. So if that's the case, then it's not a reflection of you. It's just a reflection of what the business is. But again, if you take all those measures, right, let's say that you've sent that thank you note, you've asked for feedback, you were on time, you presented yourself nicely. If the very next week, my gut health dietitian turns in her notice, guess what? I'm going to be like, oh gosh, I remember Stacey applied for that job and she really seemed to have her stuff together. I'm going to reach out to her. So again, that's where it really pays to follow through with some of those things.
That goes full circle back to how we started our conversation about networking and keeping relationships tight, and being mindful of that, being mindful that our profession is a small number of people. It's only 100,000 dietitians plus a few, students along the way, and really maintaining a positive relationship. Even if it didn't go so well the first pass, it could be a positive outcome later on, or you could collaborate later on. There could be a variety of ways to maintain that relationship and boost up both dietitians, boost up both people's profession, their career. So that's like a perfect full circle.
Yeah.
I know that you have a really fascinating additional business, and I'm going to move over to it, that I would love for you to share with everybody what it is that you offer. And I don't think I took a screenshot of it, but tell us a little bit about how everybody can connect with you and what memberships you offer.
Sure. So what we found is that I was a private practice dietitian doing my own thing, right? And I would kind of wonder, like, I wonder if anybody else is doing this, or how do other people do this? And so through a conference, I got connected with a mastermind group, and there are 7 of us in this mastermind that all have private practices. So then we said, you know what, we should do this for other people, because by being in a mastermind, it really helped you push your business forward, and it helped you grow, and it helped you learn best practices. So what we decided to do is there's 3 of us that formed Nutrition Practice Network, and we are a all things you need for private practice resource. And so we have a document library, we have a mastermind group, we have one-on-one business coaching. So everything you would need to start up a private practice, so you don't have to be the first person saying, I need a cancellation policy. Well, guess what? We have it. And we'll put you in a mastermind group that shows you connect you with other dietitians so that you can collaborate with and move forward and have accountability. And then also working one-on-one with either myself or my 2 co-founders, which are Ingrid Knight and Anna Bender-McCasey, that also have expertise in other areas. And that can help you and grow your business in whatever area that it is that you want to have your private practice.
Yeah, I think your business is beautiful. I think if I were to go into private practice, this would be an amazing resource, an amazing support. Lots, I've looked in there, and there's, chock full of so many things that you don't need to reinvent the wheel for. They can get you moving in the direction. There are, so many different successful ways that you can engage with the practice. And I think you've got great membership structures. There's so many different ways, but I think what is helpful to know is that you guys have been very successful and can pass that along, so that we don't all need to reinvent the wheel, all don't need to think about like how to build it out on our own and YouTube things and figure it out here and there. You've got it all down, and it's so fantastic. So I highly recommend everybody check out the website. It is really easy to use, and you'll see Christie on there as well. I think it's a gold mine of information, and I hope that you guys can check that out, especially if you have an interest in private practice. I think that's really good. Let me see what I have on my next slide, if I had any more information about you. Yeah, so that was just more about that stuff.
And plug for Nutrition Jobs, Stacey. I posted a position and have filled it, and the person is starting in January, and it came from Nutrition Jobs. So
that makes me
yes.
so happy. That makes me so. We've got an amazing community on Nutrition Jobs. We've got lots of goodies to help you be successful in job interviewing. Of course, we have all of the whole library of YouTube videos with amazing tutorials. And then we've got courses on how to feel more confident in a job interview process. And I've got a whole list of questions, what you can expect and how to research for a position so that you can be successful, resume templates, all kinds of goodies on there as well. And I do recommend, so when we talk about LinkedIn, obviously, if you're going to try to network with the people and they're going to be sending notes, that you're going to be sending notes back and forth with somebody that you just met or this new person that you've been interviewing for, you want to make sure that your LinkedIn is gorgeous and looks very like somebody wants to work with you, very inviting. I have a checklist on my website that you can pull up. It is on the homepage, And it's a checklist that will walk you through making sure that your LinkedIn profile is optimized and very attractive. And again, back to the YouTube, we've got lots of fantastic tutorials. Do connect with me on LinkedIn, and then also do connect with Christie. She's also on LinkedIn, but you can also check her out on the Nutrition Practice Network. And thank you everybody for joining in today. Thank you so much, Christy, for like your like
Yes.
gold mine of information. I mean, I learned so much, and I know a lot about interviewing, and you were just like so many like amazing things. I am super appreciative of all that you provided for us. So
Thank
I'm
you.
going to, yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to stop the recording. And so again, thank you everybody for joining. Thank you so much, Christy.
Have a great day.